Hello, how are you this evening? So, I want to discuss women in current events. And I'm going to start with the fact that for Black women in America, unemployment has skyrocketed because so many Black women have or had careers in the public sector, meaning the government. Specifically, I'm talking about the federal government. Now, Trump and Elon Musk, as soon as they got the opportunity, they wanted to doge and, cut government waste. And so I guess they considered a lot of employment opportunities that Black women took advantage of as government waste. So, excuse me, but there's that. Unemployment for Black women is just skyrocketing. This one, when I heard it, it just almost knocked me off my feet. I'm sure you've heard about how the Department of Education, they, gosh, I don't know if this is, oh no, this would start in summer of 2026. Nursing is not considered a professional degree. So what that really affects is student loans and access to student loans. So there would just be a limit on, how much a person pursuing a nursing degree could borrow. Well, as we all know, nursing is thought of as a woman's career. Um, Women are usually, the people who dominate that field. And so now a lot of people, there's people debating this on the internet, but I'm sorry, there's not a lot of intelligent political debate anymore because American politics now are just absurd. But anyway, this is yet another female dominated field that is being diminished, just because I guess misogyny. I mean, what else can you say? That's what it seems like to me. Just like with teachers, I'm convinced that teachers are given a hard time and don't get the respect and resources that they deserve because that is a um, woman dominated profession. So it looks like they're trying to do that to nurses as well as some other careers, most of which are known to be female dominated careers, such as social work and like physical therapy. Oddly enough, accounting is also one of these degrees that Trump and or the Republicans, I guess you would call them, Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, are all calling not a professional degree. But it makes sense to me that Trump really wouldn't be too fond of accountants and would want to discourage as many people as possible from getting those credentials. They probably only want a select few of getting those kind of credentials. So, I just talked about female dominated careers and fields that women tend to go into. Now, let's talk about this young lady named Amber Check. She lived in Minnesota. She was a welder. She's only 20 years old. She graduated and got whatever credential she needed to be a welder last year from a community college. She secured employment, was working at this one place as a welder in Minnesota. She was killed in cold blood by her coworker. It was a man who was 40, and the reason that he gave for it was, quote, he didn't like her. And they reported that on the news. That's some pretty lazy journalism to me. I mean, you would think that they would try and flesh that out a little bit, but this lady in this male dominated field was bludgeoned to death. And I just wonder about that so much. They showed the building, and it looks like a typical building that would be kind of in an industrial part of town. It just looks like a large warehouse or something like that, very big building. So, I just wonder, were they alone? Was it a setup by multiple people? Um, who knows? But that is a shame. And this is why it kind of grinds my gears. And I understand that this is an extreme example. But people always say, oh, well, more people need to go into the trades. Da, da, da. I think that's great for men. I don't think that women really have the same opportunity to go into the trades. Now, something like welding might be okay. I don't know. It's not something that I really looked into much. But, a lot of trades involve, heavy lifting, being on your feet, um, and for me personally, kind of like unpleasant um, accommodations. I knew this man once who worked in construction, and he told me, and I had never thought about this before, but he was telling me, yeah, well, I mean, you work in unfinished buildings. And I was just like, huh, yeah, I never thought about that. So it's not heat controlled, there's not running water, there's porta potties. Personally, I don't want to deal with that personally. But another part of the trades would be women just being in these all male environments. I mean, I have always imagined that those environments would either be very uncomfortable or downright hostile, like it obviously was for this one welder in Minnesota. I have had one job in my life, and it wasn't even a male dominated job because I've never had a job like that. But it was a job where I was the only woman on this one particular shift. And it was when I was in college. I was working in the cafeteria, and there was this one shift where I was the only uh, girl, and it was just a bunch of guys. And we would do what we had to do. I think it was just like setting up for, mealtime is what it was. And then we would sit down and we would eat, just the cafeteria food together. I'm not kidding you when I say, now this was a summer job, I do believe. And so I just stayed up at school that one particular summer and worked at the cafeteria. So at this one shift, all these guys talked about, and I am not exaggerating when I say all they talked about was NFL football and pornography. Those two things were the topic of conversation at every single meal. And I was just like, wow. So I never forgot that. And I never surrounded myself around, a bunch of guys again. One other thing, I stopped one day to pump gas at this one gas station that was, off of a freeway exit, and it was kind of like a truck stop. So I pumped gas, and I had to use the bathroom. So, and the bathroom was like at the back of this one gas station. It was kind of like a truck stop type thing. And then there were these guys who were sitting here. They almost look like day laborers or something like that. So anyway, I walked back to the bathroom, and this group of guys just like stared at me like, and I don't take that to mean that I looked particularly like attractive or anything, even though I was leaving church that day, so I was dressed up. But realistically, I'm pretty sure that because again, this was kind of like a truck stop situation almost. I'm sure that they're used to prostitutes coming in and out of there. So I'm just kind of like, well, yeah. So yeah, I mean, people talk about, oh yeah, consider the trades, consider the trades. Again, that's great for men. That is not great for women. So just with a lot of the things that are going on, with a lot of opportunities being eliminated, I guess, due to AI and automation and stuff like that. It's not good for women. So I do not know where this is all going to head. I'm sure that there is an end game somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. And now I want to talk about this one man named Vodi Bouchman. I may be saying that name wrong. And he is a preacher that I became familiar with because of YouTube. So, he's here nor there to me. I mean, I don't know, just not my cup of tea, really. But I'm not like outraged at anything that he had to say. But he was a black preacher. He was kind of like a conservative preacher, and he promoted things like homeschooling and like big families and stuff like that, and gender roles. So he actually died in September. And the man, I will give him credit. It looks like he really did live up to what he was preaching. He was practicing what he was preaching, because he and his wife have 9 children. They had 2, then they adopted 7 more. Now, his wife, she's probably around his age, and the man died. So now she has all these kids, and even though some of these kids are probably grown or like young adults, but some of these kids, like, because I looked it up on the internet, some of them look like they're probably still in the house. But I don't know. But even if they were all young adults, my gosh, that's like quite a burden for her to carry. So what I'm getting at is that people push all this trad wife stuff, and that husband, Vadi Bachman, he might have been the greatest husband ever for her. They were married a long time. They met, when they were young, and, stayed together until he died. So, I mean, they did it till death do them part. And then they had this big family. And I know she homeschooled those kids. So I don't know if she ever like made money or anything. But I just like wonder. I'm just like, my goodness, like, now what? Now he was probably a responsible guy, and had all the paperwork and finances right and stuff like that. But nonetheless, I'm just sitting here like, what is she going to do? Like, that's quite an emotional burden to carry. She has a very big family to be concerned with. And then there's the finances. So I just look at all of this and I just think this trad wife stuff doesn't really work out that well. I mean, because this lady, again, he might have been the greatest guy ever, but people die. So it's just really kind of unfortunate how people are trying to limit women's opportunities and, you know, create hostile work environments when it's a more male dominated field. It's very unfortunate that that is all happening. And again, I don't consider myself to be a feminist, but I do consider myself to be fair and to have some common sense and realistic. I do think that there's a lot of people who want to almost kind of paint women into a corner so that, they really have to be dependent on men. However, men have been on the internet for years and years now, arguing over who's going to pay for dates. Like, who's going to pick up the tab at a Red Lobster or Golden Corral or something like that. And I don't use Twitter anymore, but I bet right now, if you go over to Twitter, there are people arguing over who is going to pay for dates, and some of the men are probably like my age, with like gray beards, arguing over paying for dates and arguing over child support. That's another thing that men have complained about a lot on the internet. So I don't know. I don't know. I think it's just very unfortunate. So I just want to talk about that, just talk about these few women's issues in 2025. And actually, I have some more uh, videos I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about the Miss Universe pageant since I'm talking about women. I'm not going to do that now. That needs to be a whole nother video. But yeah, I want to talk about the Miss Universe pageant because that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I'm going to get off of here. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Bye.